Hey guys, doing something a little bit different this time. We have a spontaneous matchup here on Lee Chess, which is not a part of the Crazyhouse World Championship candidate cycle. This is rather just a spontaneous matchup, but I thought I had to record it because we've got some special players here. We have eekarf, who is a candidate in the Crazyhouse World Championship tournament, against Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan, who has only recently kind of thrown his hat into the rink, if you will, of Crazyhouse competition, especially here on Lee Chess. And I thought I had to record this and see how he stacks up against some of the world's best Crazyhouse and bug players, which eekarf is. So they played one game so far. I was lucky enough to catch the series before it got too deep, so I'm hoping that we can kind of get a lot of games in here and get a pretty decent sample size from these two players. Yasser Seirawan did win the first game against eekarf, so Grandmaster Seirawan is certainly no schmuck when it comes to these variants. He, of course, is a proponent of his own variant known as S chess, maybe probably better known as Seirawan chess, but I think he developed it alongside a compatriot. But anyway, yeah, that's just to say that he's very good at these variants as well. He was for some time one of the top 10 chess players in the world, of course, and I think that gift translates naturally into Crazyhouse. So okay, what's going on in this game? Looks like eekarf is putting the pressure on Yasser Seirawan here. He's got a minute and 30 to Grandmaster Seirawan under a minute now. King out in the open. He doesn't want to take that knight. If he had taken that knight, rook at at a5, king takes knight, queen out was mate. So what's the continuation from here? I think white's perfectly safe, and he's just trying to figure out how to coordinate these pieces with this rook to find mate. So if rook a5, king a7, you can then play knight here. Okay, so he's playing rook a4, leaving this square open for this knight to hop in, maybe. But you can play knight here or this knight here. That makes sense. Now you'd like to get this queen active, so queen here. Yeah, that's going to do it. He grabs this bishop. So okay, 1-1. Looks like this is shaping up to be a pretty good series here. It looks like, at least thus far, they're evenly matched. I did play Mr. Yasser Seirawan on chess.com in Crazyhouse some time ago. And he struck me as a somewhat positional player when it comes to Crazyhouse. You know, he has such a profound positional understanding. So, all right, we've got these d4, d5 setups here. Yasser Seirawan making a little bit of headway. Tell you what, I'd be overjoyed to see Yasser Seirawan get even more immersed in the Crazyhouse scene here on Lee Chess. And would love to see him get involved in the Crazyhouse World Championship. Maybe commentate something. That's the dream, right, guys? Commentate on the final championship, maybe. That would be excellent, alongside a guy like Catcherfeed or Jan Lee. All right, so a bunch of trades possible here. Just going to replace this pawn at h3, kick that bishop away. Just going to take with the g-pawn instead of exposing that queen to tempo hits with a knight drop or something. All right. Yasser Seirawan scooping up a little bit more material here. And eekarf trying to draw the king out here. That's taken. Then you get some tempo with a knight drop. And when you take here, then you've got this nice f3 square to work with. So that's a strong move there. Very important move, so that white couldn't consolidate by putting his own pawn at g2, at which point he would be relatively safe and would have consolidated the extra material that he grabbed. So if that's taken with the queen, you have a knight drop here. If that's taken with the king, then you still have a knight drop here and bishop drop here. So king's going to sidestep here and let that pawn at f3 occupy that square, so it can't be occupied by one of these pieces. But eekarf has found a lot of, I think the light squares have become a little bit too weak. He's got back the material, and now white's king is quite weak. Got this open g file. Maybe you want to put a rook along this g file eventually. You're threatening just rook at h1 next. threatening also things like knight at g4. If that's taken, then rook here, and rook here will mate. So what about knight here? King steps up, and then bishop here, the knight's on that, so maybe that doesn't work. But knight here still should be considered, I feel. If you just play rook here straight away, takes, and then white can take here, although I think black is fairly safe there. Maybe needs to be a little bit careful, because king here, knight here, takes, king sidesteps, pawn on, king takes, then you take the queen with check. So, okay, so he has found this knight g4 move, and the king does have to step up to g3. Yep, bishop does come out. Let's see what his plan is. After takes, is there some kind of smother, or queen takes, or, okay, no, you're just going to take that material. And you distracted this knight away from g7. So you've given this bishop up in order to get the knight away from g7. So now you're free to take this queen without worrying about the knight checks. Alright, knight comes back on. So is there a mate somewhere with this queen? So if queen drops here, king can take one of these two. King has to take the knight, actually, because this would hang. So queen here, king takes the knight. Now, where's the mate? Is there one? h5? No, he takes on h3 first. This must be mate, right? King h5, then pawn at g6. Alright, so eekarf goes up a game, 2-1. And Yasser Seirawan playing the French with the black pieces. eekarf playing the knight c3 variation. Okay, so he's going to take with the knight at the pawn, takes with the pawn, so now we have an exchange French. Bishop comes out to b4 again. Similar, I think he played c6 last time. Similar position from as the game 2 games ago, I think. Alright, bishop comes on to the h4 d8 diagonal, pinning up that knight in f6. So eventually this bishop will probably come out to this diagonal, maybe a pawn here. Queen just comes to this nice open file first. Pawn at h6, looks natural. Takes. Knight here maybe, but then you have some tension here and a lot of trades. Yeah, if a lot of trades come off, it'll benefit white here, who has a pretty natural looking attack. So Yasser Seirawan taking a few precious seconds here to evaluate what the best defense is. I think normally you have to take that and then decide what to do. You want to kick this bishop, but if you move knight here immediately, then you just open up a lot of trades, and that's going to benefit white. So instead, at a3, pretty normal motif of trying to get rid of this pawn so you can take here. So double-edged position here. You're allowing these dark square weaknesses just to stand around the king side if you're black, but you have some counter-attacking ideas here on the queen side. So taking this knight, and now maybe something will appear on e4, either a knight or a pawn. Knight attacking the c3 square, so that's a weakness you've made by counter-attacking on the queen side. It's a c3 square. Takes? Okay. I'm not entirely convinced about that, although you did open up this pen. I would have preferred taking with a queen, just so you're not in this pen. But and with a bishop here and a queen here, then you're still covered on these diagonals. But anyway, takes with the bishop, which is perfectly fine as well, covering all these squares. I'm not convinced by eekarf's decision to take that rook, because I think this bishop is more valuable than this rook, and now you've allowed him to kind of cover his dark squares, which was the one trump you had in the position. And there's nothing immediate you can do with this rook, really. You can't even place it along the g-file, because these squares are all covered by black. His knights. Okay, so the bishop comes on to d2. You are looking at this h6 square, but okay, so that's just taken. Maybe bishop at h6 next, or if you want to activate this queen e8, but then that's a little bit hairy. So bishop at h6, solid. Knight at f5. So if knight at f5, takes. You have some at h3 nastiness with a knight drop hanging in the air, something like that. So knight does appear on f5. Do you want to take this? Maybe just play like bishop at f4. No, Yasser Seirawan with his superior positional understanding puts another piece on the light squares. So he already has these bishops on the dark squares, so instead of going for my idea and piling up on the dark squares, he's just going for a more balanced approach and putting this diagonal piece on the light squares. Okay, so we are blocking off that g-file with this move. He puts a rook on the g-file nonetheless. I've got about even time here, do eekarf and Yasser Seirawan, so he takes on d2 now. And the knight does reappear on e4, okay. So that makes sense. Now with this queen moves, you have a pawn drop here, and white will have to forfeit his castling privileges. Additionally, if you move somewhere like e2, then this, actually the rook does cover this pawn for now. But okay, you probably want to take that with this knight, or if you try to activate the queen, then white's going to have some tempo moves, like bishop here. So if bishop here takes, knight here is dangerous, because if you take that, then queen comes on mate, and if you move the king, then queen will come on g8 mate. So yeah, I don't think that was the best idea. Instead, he goes for knight at h6. Okay, so now you gotta figure out whether you want to hit this queen or move your queen. I think moving your queen is most prudent here. eekarf, the clock ticking down here. Okay, so you can't take the queen because rook g8 will mate. So you got to take here. What's white's threat after you take here? Do you take with the queen? Yeah, he does take the queen. Now, I'm not really sure what white's follow-up here is to that move. Bishop here can just be taken. Bishop on any of these squares can just be taken. He has no rook or anything to place here. His queen is under attack. Bishop at g5. I'm not convinced about that. I think you can even just take here. Yeah, you can just take here. Now rook here is interesting. Rook here takes, bishop takes. Maybe that's not necessary. Maybe rook here. Maybe just rook here to start, probably. And then you can take here, and then actually, yeah. Stuff like, I was going to say a rook on this square would be fine too, because then you can take this knight, bring this rook to the open file, drop knights around the king. It should be mating, I think. Bishop h6, just throwing a check on. Bring this rook, the file should be good as well. You can just take this knight whenever you want to. So you take. It's coming down to a time scramble, though. I think black was in cruise control there, but he's allowed his time to dwindle down, and now with just a few blocks there, if he just blocks those checks and pre-moves a little bit, yeah, eekarf steps away with the win there. I think he's a little bit lucky to win that one, because I think Mr. Seirawan had a commanding position and a commanding lead, but couldn't find mate with a time situation. So okay, eekarf goes up 3-1 now, and we've got something of an advanced French without the pawn on d4, which is an interesting way of playing, because then you leave yourself the option, should you want to, of playing d3 instead of d4 and controlling the e4 square, which is often very weak when you play this. You play the advanced French with the pawns on these squares, because a pawn or a knight will almost always appear on e4. So okay, we go down a little bit different path here. We've got some interesting centralized knights here. Okay. Let's see if Yasser Seirawan kind of picks up the tempo of this game a little bit. Should probably figure out a better way to call Mr. Yasser Seirawan. Call him Yasser, call him Seirawan. Okay, so I'm trying to evaluate this position here. Black has a lot of pressure on this square and the light squares in particular. Look at all these pieces aimed at the light squares. And by actually, yeah, if we go back and move, by taking on g2, he kind of exacerbated this weakness and made it a little bit more pronounced. So now white is up a little bit of material, I think a piece for a pawn, but black has a safer king and has the initiative. So now you're threatening just to take here, and then place a pawn on, and it looks pretty dangerous. Takes, pawn on, and knights here, queens here, pawn here, whatever, will be mating, I suspect. So If you play this move, then you're opening up the square to a knight drop. So instead you just place a queen here. So yeah, now after takes, queen at a4 is no longer available. So how do you defend these threats? Is bishop here enough? Because then you open up this rook and can recapture the rook should he take on d1. But there's still a lot of threats in the air, like knight coming on to f3 in some situations. Because bishop here doesn't have an immediate threat. It may be the best move in the position though, so he does go for it. Okay, so black looking for some sorts of immediate threats to put on. Because white's going to need at least 2 tempo to create some mating threats. So what do you do? Knight here, if takes, and just take with a pawn and kind of create this mating threat on e2. You do have ideas of pawn drops on d2. So what if king f1, the knight covers the e1 mating square for now, and the bishop covers this square from a knight check. So is king f1 okay? If king f1, probably just pawn at h3 will be deadly. Here, pawn on, knight moves. Knight can't move at all because of queen drop, of course. So king f1, I think pawn at h3 should be enough to kind of seal the deal here. So if pawn at h3, how are you responding if you're white? Do you take this knight then? Oh, looks suspicious. Looks suspicious. So if you take this knight, pawn takes, you can take here. So takes, just gonna move this knight. So okay, so he moves the knight to the e1 square, so that's occupied for now. If he takes, king takes, knight on, king up. No, that doesn't look good. So he just take on g5 instead. Okay, so that's just material up, and yeah, that's the most solid option, I think. Very mature decision there from eekarf rather than sacking or anything. He just scoops up the material, and his overwhelming initiative remains, and Yasser Seirawan concedes. So okay, 4-1 to eekarf. Make sure everything's up and running here. Yeah, all right. So we're going down a very similar line again, same line. Yeah, and this is a line he actually came out ahead in the last game, going down the same line with this at h6 takes, and then pawn at a3 counterpunch, same line. Let's see if eekarf finds an improvement. So he ends up taking on f8 again. It's interesting. The idea of bishop at c1 is again to try to drive this bishop away, because then you can take on c3. Okay, so we've got a few exchanges. The queen does end up on f8. You're covering. You still have all these dark squares covered, importantly, and all your threats remain in white's camp. So I would take black here. Seems eekarf hasn't really figured out the best way to counter this opening yet. Even though he's beaten it a few times already, but it was mostly on the clock, if I recall correctly, those last few games, when he was playing the white pieces against this French. So okay, rook does come on to g3 again. So you can block that, pawn at g6, bishop at g6 instead. It's perfectly fine. Takes, just take that queen, right? Takes queen, but now the rook does cover the c3 square. That's what that rook at g3 move was all about, hitting the king with tempo and covering c3. So now you're safe to take on c1. But now you're just going to hit this rook and try to drive it away from this square. And this knight, yeah, this knight is nicely located on the f5 square, covering these holes in your own camp, attacking the rook, attacking d4. It's a nice knight. So okay, you can just take here if you want to, but then it's a pawn, it's a threat on the queen. It's not bad. Yasser Seirawan, or Mr. Seirawan, is looking for something a little bit better here. He takes on c3 first. Okay. And now he just replaces the pawn on g7. Okay, I'm not sure whether or not that was necessary, but it's super solid, of course. Alright, f6 is possible here. Nope, he's not going to worry about it. He says, I'm safe enough on the dark squares. You can stack there if you want. I'm just going to create my own threats. But what's this rook actually doing now on b1? Now that you've castled. Now that white has castled. Okay, you take that bishop. Do you want to take here and then place a bishop here on f4? That seems like a reasonable option. Takes, bishop f4. Or takes here, maybe. Then you allow the f-file to open up. So he does go for this. He takes on c1, which is just a trade, of course. A rook for bishop is a pretty equal trade in Crazyhouse. So if that's taken, then I expect a bishop here. Or maybe you want to take this first, now that you've driven the rook away from the f-file. Okay, eekarf is going to throw some checks on first. That's interesting. I mean, you can just step to h1 or h8 here. You can just take that as well, maybe. Safer just to hop to h8 and keep your pawns, a little pawn wall here, intact. So that's what he does. Roughly, I was going to say roughly equal on the clock, but actually eekarf's a little bit down the clock. He does take now, and the bishop does appear on the square as I anticipated. So okay, so the bishop is attacking both these rooks. So if you do eliminate this rook, then white's first rank is going to be quite weak. First, he's creating some counter threats on the queen. That's a nice move. Taking here first, because you can't take, because this queen does drop with check. So, now, do you just take here? Maybe. Get a rook and the knight for the queen. After it takes, and white doesn't have any immediate threats. Instead, you're going to preserve this queen. Probably, yeah, that's actually a pretty nice move. Attacking this rook. Saving the queen and attacking the c3 bishop, which he's just going to scoop up. I think black's going to win this one. You can take on f4, but then I'm not really sure what the continuation was going to be. But okay, so now you are threatening a rook at g8 checkmate by blocking off this back rank. So you take here, replace this rook on the back rank. Maybe rook at f8, yeah, because if takes, then this knight can take, and threatening to take here, stuff like that. eekarf always resilient here, and always creating threats and never giving Seirawan a moment of respite, making him always think, always burn time. All right, now I think eekarf's going to pull away with this one amazingly. I did like black there in the middle game, but looks like eekarf is now up 10 seconds in a crucial time scramble here. And I think he's going to do it on the clock. He's just got to move now. Yeah. And Seirawan's time expires. eekarf going up 5-1, but I'm not sure how representative that score line is of the actual quality of games. I think it's been pretty, even keel, pretty contentious in every single match so far, and I think if Yasser Seirawan maybe managed his time a little bit better, and put the pressure on eekarf a little bit more, I think he would be walking away with some more points. But okay, looks like we've got something a little bit different this time. We do have the same advanced French pawn structure, but we don't have any exchanges yet. Now we do have exchanges, but I don't think they've gone down this exact variation just yet. So they're kind of poking and prodding and figuring out which variation in the French their opponent is least comfortable in so far. Alright, bishop does appear on e4. As I was saying a few games back, that's always a square something is going to appear on in the French, in the advanced French. And Crazyhouse. Okay, knight at h3, so you're attacking this queen and covering the h3 square, so that, like, if this bishop ever moves, then you don't have knight at h3 checks to worry about with this pen. So knight at h3, kicking the queen. Ooh, that's interesting. eekarf immediately saying, I am not going to go on the defensive. I'm not going to allow you to kick my queen around. I'm going to take that, give up my queen for just a piece, in order to give up even more material here, giving up another piece. So now you're essentially giving up a queen for a pawn, just in exchange for these light square weaknesses. Very interesting play from eekarf. Very ambitious play. Is it enough? Is it enough? Seirawan doesn't even want that piece. He figures he takes with the king. Maybe he's a little bit too weak here on this f3 square. I think he could have gotten away with it if takes, pawn on, takes, queen takes, you have this square covered from a knight drop. But so instead, anyway, he doesn't want to go for it. He thinks it's too dangerous, and he's kind of conceding a little bit here by playing bishop at h1 and just covering the light squares instead of going into those complications, which is maybe a more practical decision. So what's eekarf's follow-up here? Knight at e3 would create some more weaknesses by getting rid of this f2 pawn, but gives it more material here, and that's probably not a good move at all. So if how else do you preserve this knight though? Because after pawn at f3, takes, queen takes, this knight's trapped. And then if that happens, pawn at f3, takes, queen takes, then you're threatening to take on f7 actually. Because then the king takes, knight comes in, and you're threatening a queen drop on f7. Okay, so takes, probably queen takes, so that this bishop continues defending h3. I was going to say, if bishop e4, then you're going to take there twice and get two bishops for the queen. So bishop at d5 is a little bit of a smarter option, I feel. Ooh, that's clever. That's clever. So if you're still getting two bishops for the queen here. If that's recaptured, then you take here on d5. If takes here, then you can just take here on f7 and do the same idea I was mentioning last time with the knight coming on a queen drop. So nice way to get those two bishops for the queen, despite the bishop appearing on d5 instead of d4. Clever solution there from Seirawan. Okay, so you were threatening bishop takes f7. So queen at h5 covers that and also pins its knight up. Okay, Seirawan offering a queen trade there. So now you're taking on f7. I expect his idea was to take on f7, but you're just going to move the king, I feel, if you're black. I don't think you can take that and survive. So king is figuring out where he wants to move the king. d8 takes here. He figures he's safe enough. Like, because black doesn't have any knight drops. He doesn't have a knight in hand. So queen here wouldn't lead to much after just knight here or even bishop here. So he's going on the defensive. Yeah, I think Seirawan, if he manages his time correctly, and has 3 times the time that eekarf does have anyway, so I don't anticipate that being a problem. I expect him to win this one. Which I think will be a well-deserved victory after something of a dry stretch there. I see no reason just to why not just to take on d6. Bishop comes on, you have all these dark square weaknesses to worry about. Yeah, not really much to commentate here in this position. I think it's just lost. Black only has diagonal pieces, and no diagonal pieces are going to hurt your king if I can draw arrows. No diagonal pieces are going to hurt your king. Sits nicely in h2. Alright, let's see if they continue this series. Seirawan going back on the board with 2-5. Rematch offer was sent. Both players still seem to be present. What that little green dot means, but now eekarf is left. So, okay, unfortunate. It looks like this series is going to end, but it was a very interesting one nonetheless. I was glad to tune into it and commentate a little bit, and hope you guys enjoyed seeing how Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan stacks up against some of the world's best in Crazyhouse. Alright, I'll talk to you soon.